Yeah, we'll be there soon, Thomas, I'm sure. I was asked to give a presentation on the human rights dimension of the situation of freedom of expression in Turkey. And to do so, I'll be taking you through a couple of the problematic pieces of legislation and also give you a couple of more examples. We've already seen many examples. I was going to start with a very short clip from a documentary. I think it might actually be good timing, so you can just zoom out and stare at the screen. It's 2.5 minutes of the documentary Persona non grata. It was produced by the media platform P24 and released on World Press Freedom Day on the 3rd of May. This is just a very short clip. If you can put it on, please. Could you start at 1 minute 40? That will do, thanks.
Bugün 26 Şubat, Cumhurbaşkanımızın yaş günü. Kendine özgü bir yaş günü kutlaması yapıyor. Kendisine hakaret ettiğini iddia ettiği gazetecilere yargılaması var bugün. 2 dizi yaptım. Birisi 17 Aralık'ta ne yaşandığını anlatan bir diziydi. Onun savcısıyla konuştum. Onunla ilgili soruşturma başlattılar. Savcıyla konuştuğum için. Orada ifade vereceğim. Öbürü de 25 Aralık yolsuzluk operasyonuyla ilgili polis fezlekelerini yayınlamıştım. Orada da hakaret ve gizliliği ihlalden dolayı dava açıldı. 9 yıla kadar hapsim isteniyor. Orada da mahkeme bugün ilk duruşması, zorla getirilme kararı var hakkımda. Dolayısıyla yarım saate kadar yetişemezsek tutuklanma ihtimali var. Onun için köprü trafiğini açmaya çalışıyoruz. Bir dava daha var bugün, yargılamasına başlanacak. O da fezlekelerin açıklanması üzerine yasak konmuştu, sansür vardı. O yasağın karşısına çıktım ve fezlekeleri bilmek halkın hakkı diye bir köşe yazısı yazmıştım. Onda da hakaret suçu bulmuşlar. Orada da dava açıldı. İkisinde de başbakan ve oğlunun karşısında sanık olarak bugün mahkemeye çıkacağım. Artık mesleğin bir parçası gözüyle bakıyoruz. Yargılanmayanlarda bir mahcubiyet hissi oluyor. Biz işin tadını çıkarıyoruz.
14 Ağustos günü işte gazetede işten çıkarmam için ismimin geldiğini öğrendim. İşte anlatılana göre bana yönetim tarafından MİT Müsteşarı Hakan Fidan başbakanlığı döneminde şahsımla ilgili briefing verdiği, benim polis ve savcılarla irtibatımın olduğu, telefon görüşmelerimin olduğu, bu polislerden bilgi, belge aldığımı ve bunlara hizmet ettiğimi söylemiş. Bu şekilde bir belge geldiği ifade edildi MİT'ten de. Bu konuda hani ben de gazete yönetimine söyledim. Kiminle görüşebilirim? Adliye muhabiriyim ben. Yani bir manavla görüşecek değildim haberi ya da bir çaycıdan haberi alacak değildim.
Bağımlıcı'daki Sabah gazetesinin ve dergi grubunun önüne 16-17 kişilik bir kadın grubu geldi. Ellerinde dövizler vardı. Ben de o sırada binanın önünde.
The first person you saw is Can Dündar. He's been talked about various times over the course of this evening. It's the same journalist that was threatened by Erdogan with aggravated lifelong plus 42 years in prison. But it's not the first case, as you can take from this clip. I wanted to show you this particular bit because I think it shows the two main ways in which freedom of expression and press freedom are targeted. It's on the one hand state censorship, so court cases, and on the other hand pressure, threats that lead to self-censorship. So that's pressure on journalists, but also on editors-in-chief, on the owners of media organizations. So, can I have my presentation here? Thanks. So I'm supposed to. So I work for Amnesty International. I'm the Turkey coordinator at the Dutch section here in Amsterdam. To us, freedom of expression in Turkey is a very urgent matter. Well, We've seen a rise of violations of the right to freedom of expression, but also of assembly, arbitrary use of anti-terrorism law, well, the whole lot. And that's why we focus on freedom of expression, and we have been focusing on freedom of expression in Turkey, and we do so by research, lobbying, campaigning, training, and also by trial observation. So the cases that will come, that I will talk about as examples, are actually cases that are part of our research and or trial cases that we follow with a group of international observers. So this is a report that we published 2 years ago, just ahead of the Gezi demonstrations, or rather just before the Gezi demonstrations broke out. It is about a number of articles in the Turkish Penal Code and anti-terrorism law. Some of them have been amended pretty soon afterwards. The report was published just ahead of the adoption of the so-called fourth judicial package by the Turkish parliament, but most of the articles are still in place, and they are the basis for many prosecutions. This is a report we published a year ago. It was the follow-up of a first report on the Gezi demonstrations. And they're about investigating cases of impunity for police violence and the crackdown in general on people who merely exercise their freedom of peaceful protest through prosecutions and police violence. The report also talks about professional groups that were harassed, for instance, for providing medical care. And in fact, the Turkish parliament passed a law in January 2014 criminalizing the provision of unlicensed medical services. So it's just another example of how professional groups are targeted. And we will have a follow-up report on freedom of expression published this fall after the summer. I'd like to just underline that independence is key to our work, key to the work of Amnesty, and no matter who is in charge, we have been and we will be following up the situation, and we will continue to raise our voice. Now, to the legal framework. So, essentially, the right to freedom of expression is protected in Turkey's constitution, but the restrictions imposed on this right are broader than those permissible in international law. In fact, it is often said that Turkish laws were designed to protect the state from its citizens rather than the other way around. And you could certainly argue that the often broad definitions are open to abuse and arbitrariness, and they're often used in this way. So in fact, some of these laws are very useful tools in quelling dissent. Even if this has reached unprecedented scale in recent years, it's not new and it's not typical of the current government. Turkey has a history of broad and vaguely formulated laws which have been applied in violation of the freedom of expression. So it has been mentioned before already, Turkey is no longer the top jailer of journalists. I'm not sure of the current number, but I think it's around 6 or 7 or so. And many of the prosecutions and lawsuits end in acquittal or in conditional sentences. As far as I'm aware, if you're sentenced to anything up to 2 years, it's conditional. So basically that's another check on you, another form of censorship. But stifling of the press is very effectively done also through the structure of media ownership, with many owners that are close to and or dependent on government favors, and so simply have journalists fired, and so they are deprived of their means of income. I think that's an important point to make. I think that's also sort of been raised by other people before, but being a journalist is also a profession. It's how people make their money, and so it makes the self-censorship even more understandable, I think, in a way, because you want to protect your means of income. So the first bit, well, these are a number of articles in the Turkish penal law that are used for prosecutions. The first 4 are very famous ones, or they used to be very famous ones. Article 301 used to be sort of this, this expression, denigration of the Turkish nation. It was amended somewhat, but it's been, for instance, the basis of a lawsuit against Orhan Pamuk, who made remarks about the Armenian genocide and the Kurdish issue to a Swiss newspaper, I think back in 2005 or 7. Randing, yes. The last 3, and especially the last one, that our guest Ergun is also familiar with, the defamation articles are very much in vogue nowadays. Someone mentioned a number of, you did, of over 300 cases. I know that BNet, which is one of the few independent media institutions. Sorry?
Because it involves, some cases involve multiple people.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's the number of individuals.
Okay. Okay. Another number I found from BNet, someone working for BNet, who also is the Reporters Without Borders representative in Turkey, Inderolu. He reported that in the January-March period of this year, there were 56 defamation cases, so that actually came to the court, were initiated, 39 of which on behalf of Erdogan, his son or his entire family, either as punitive or as compensation lawsuits. Another well-known one is under Article 216, Fazıl Say, a Turkish pianist who was prosecuted for tweeting, and he was accused of insulting religious values. So it's another example. These are two examples of cases that we follow as Amnesty. Onur Kilic is a political activist. He took part in a demonstration against obligatory religious education and was charged for calling the president a thief, murderer, Erdogan. His first hearing was in May, and his second hearing is in 2 weeks. And on the other side is Barış İnce, he's the guy in the middle. The other two, the woman on the left is on the right is the director of Amnesty Germany, and the man on the left is the press officer of Amnesty Turkey. This is in the courthouse, by the way, the huge building that you saw in the clip just now. It's also the face of the Turkish judiciary. The Çağlayan courthouse in Istanbul is amazed. Not as in amazing, but it's incredible. So Barış İnce is the editor-in-chief of Bir Gün, a relatively small newspaper that gained lots of new readership through the Gezi events. His case is interesting, and I'm going to read it out. He was charged with insulting President and his son Bilal Erdogan for writing about a corruption case that implicates the president's son. He defended himself, and the first letters of each line in his defense statement together read, "Thief Tayyip." So the current case is based on this. The first hearing was last Tuesday, and the court case continues in October. So let's continue to the anti-terrorism law. Oh, it doesn't fit entirely. Not that important. This is the definition of terrorism. I'm not going to read it out to you, but it's very broad. And Amnesty has been calling on the Turkish authorities to bring it in line with international human rights standards, because you can fit a lot in this definition. And tens of thousands of cases are apparently brought to the court under these laws each year.
Tens of thousands, Marjanne?
Yes. These are a number of articles, also a couple of penal law that are related to terrorism. These have very often been used in relation to the Kurdish issue and against individuals who legitimately express their opinion on Kurdish rights or on Kurdish politics. One such example, which is an atypical example, I think, but it's a case that Amnesty work on the so-called peace mother, a 65 or so year old lady called Sultani Alcebuca, and she was charged under Penal Code Article 314 and 215 and Anti-Terrorism Law Article 7.2 because she took part in demonstrations calling for an end to the conflict between the Turkish armed forces and the PKK. She was convicted in 2010, and the conviction was overturned in November 2013, so it also takes a long time. So being in a court case, I can imagine, is at least also a nuisance. You have to go there and you expect it and you have to live with this.
But the situation has changed. He controls now the first court, upper court, even constitutional court.
Yeah, so a matter of years.
Yeah.
Two other examples. The case of Ahmet Şik was already talked about. He's the guy on the left. And Frederike Geerdink also mentioned already. Basically, to cut a very long story short, Ahmet Şik was charged because he was writing a book about the Gülen movement, and he was accused, together with Nedim Şener, of assisting a terrorist organization, i.e. the Ergenekon the Ergenekon nationalist organization. And they both spent actually a year in pre-trial detention, and as far as I know, the trial is still ongoing, or at least it hasn't finished. And on the right is the Dutch journalist Frederike Geering. I actually attended her trial in Diyarbakir in April as an observer. It was very interesting and very weird, because the prosecutor that had prepared the case demanded a certain sentence, I don't remember which. The prosecutor that then handled the case, so he was the one who was in the courtroom, asked for acquittal. And so she was acquitted, and the first prosecutor is now appealing. So apparently this can happen. It's very rare in Turkey also, but it can happen. It just shows you, yeah, how arbitrary it all is. Internet, that's a whole other realm. I have to say I'm not very much of an expert on internet legislation, but I'm sure you're all aware of the bans, how Twitter and Facebook were banned, for instance, ahead of the local elections last year. Another case of 29 people who were on trial for inciting the public to break the law during the Gezi demonstrations for tweeting. Unfortunately, it's not entirely on this sheet, but the Internet Law, number 5651, was amended last year and, well, is untransparent, very vaguely formulated. It gives very broad powers to the Telecommunications Authority, and it has very limited judicial oversight. Internet sites can be blocked, tweets can be blocked. It's a very powerful tool, again. I wanted to try and end with a positive note. I think the internet also provides some opportunities. It's already been mentioned before that the internet penetration in Turkey is extremely high. More than 90% of Turks are on Facebook, more than 70 have a Twitter account. There's been a rise of citizen journalism. Now, obviously, citizen journalism is in no way a replacement for professional journalism or for investigative journalism, but there is a lot happening. I listed a few examples. There's 140 Journos, which is a network of people who tweet live through this account called 140 Journos, and it was started in the wake of the I think it was in the wake of the Uludere or Roboski massacre, and there was a ban on news coverage. And the guys behind it, very young, were so disgraced that they started this initiative. Another random example is Tekilerin Postası, and I listed separately P24. They are also the media platform behind the documentary that I showed you a clip of. As far as I'm aware, it's basically the media platform where all journalists that were fired basically flock to. And but the great thing is they're also offering training opportunities. So they're actually trying to change the journalistic landscape in Turkey. So, as a positive note, I hope. And yeah, whatever happens on Sunday, Amnesty will be sure to be following and raise our voice about freedom of expression in Turkey. Thank you very much.